Hey, how you going, random stranger? I am super keen to get into episodes 5 and 6 of Hibike Euphonium, but first we have to get through this annoying analysis. I'm kidding. Like 98.5% kidding. Obviously, I love digging into the details with you guys, especially with a show like Hibike, where picking up on all the little details, including all of the unspoken ones, I think greatly enhances the enjoyment of the show significantly. So we're going to do that right now. I'm going to start today's recap by basking in my newfound appreciation for brass and woodwind instruments and those who play them. From Nuclear Snake, on the topic of attention being put on the instruments, which I have raved on quite a bit already, but I feel a bit more won't go amiss. Ironically enough, when I hear Hibike, the first thing that comes to my mind is not the music, but the images of those bright, metallic, glossy brass colors. They are a huge part of this show's identity to me. Yes, I am glad that we share an appreciation for the instrument design that the late, great Hiroyuki Takahashi really put his soul into, and it's so obvious. When rewatching those episodes, I found myself just looping over and over those few seconds of focus shots on the instruments, especially when they're being played in time with the music. I mean, what more could you ask? They are shiny, they're incredibly detailed, and they are musically accurate. Actually, the music nerd in me kind of freaked out a bit watching Sapphire pluck her double bass. And I know it's not a woodwind or a brass instrument, but in the same spirit of appreciating the detail in the instrument animation, because they even animated the string vibrations, right? You see that like blur on the lower part of the string? When you watch that in motion, it is so freaking cool. It's, I would say, probably accurate down to the sine wavelength. Dubs Checkham pointed out something to me that as a string player, I'd never really given much thought to. And that is how physically fit you have to be to play brass instruments. And we saw that with the band doing laps around the running track before picking up their instruments and playing as a training exercise. So about the marching training, they wrote, I feel that is somewhat realistic. There has been research in the last decade or so that shows that marching band is similar in physical demands as some sports. Marching in sync while carrying and playing an instrument, some heavier than others, for a long period of time requires a certain level of physical fitness in order to participate. From what I've read, some programs are even implementing a physical condition program to get their members in shape. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. And as a string player, obviously, we never had to do any sort of marching band exercise or performance. All we really do is we sit our asses in those chairs and play. So, to add to that, let me pull up the other comment on how awesome brass players are. Yeah, so RTADC Mixed Bag also made the point that if you have like respiratory issues like a cough or allergies or asthma, those also inhibit your playing. So thinking about the physical stamina that is required for being in a marching band, it pains me to say this, but I realize that if a brass band were pitted against a string orchestra in a fight to the death, something like in Squid Games or something, we would be totally massacred. Probably. Nah, like totally. Also, because of Hibike, like I dug out this Chinese bamboo flute and I've been trying to practice playing it because, I mean, how hard can it be, right? And the scientific conclusion is I am shit. So, and you're only ever going to hear me say this once because the piano and the violin both co-own my soul and I cannot show any deference to any other type of instrument. But I am right now paying my respects to anyone who does play a woodwind or a brass instrument because it's freaking hard. One more interesting musical nerd fact, this time from Pencil Sharp 333 about tuning, because last time I had said I wasn't really sure how tuning differs between, say, like string instruments versus woodwind or brass. So they wrote in, Wind instruments seem to rely on tuners for longer than string players. One reason I can think of is different fingerings can have different tuning characteristics. For example, on saxophones, middle B tends flat, D tends sharp, and F is right in the middle. Also, the disassembly of some instruments involves taking apart the tuning mechanism, and wind's tuning is more affected by air temperature than strings. Yeah, thank you for letting me know. It makes total sense that the construction and the material and the way of tuning would greatly impact how easy it is to keep the pitch. And that's part of what makes music so great. Even if you don't play an instrument yet, it's just cool and nerdy to know about all of the nuanced differences between each of the instruments, let alone the history of how those instruments came into being. On to the actual anime. Based on little things that were revealed in the last 2 episodes, there are several characters outside of the drama couple, Reina and Kumiko, whose backstories I am super curious about and just kind of can't help speculating on. First off, Sapphire. I love how incredibly in tune with her instrument and her music that she is. She is incredibly passionate, but we're seeing a little more each time that attitude applies to her whole character and all of the other areas of her life too, including gacha. She wants to get her hands on a contrabass, a little model contrabass, and she refuses to get the toy from anyone else because otherwise it wouldn't count. It's very endearing, this shoot for the moon, do or die approach to life. It is pure stubbornness, and it also explains a lot why she is so accomplished at her instrument. She also seems to value friendship a lot, like a lot. She got upset that Kumiko and Hazuki went to see the flute section without her. Either that or she just really wanted to spy on Taki sensei and see him school all the others. The other quote-unquote side character that I'm even more curious about now, even though I have already ranted about how much I love her, is Asuka. Asuka is flamboyant, is the word that comes to mind. Like Sapphire, she's very passionate, but it expresses itself in this... God, even my throat gets caught up talking about Asuka. What was I saying? Yeah, so her passion, it expresses itself in this very confident and unflappable demeanor, and sometimes these wildly eccentric speeches. The way she talks about instruments too, describing the relationship between an instrument and its player as this sort of life partnership, totally fits the stereotypical, very idiosyncratic musician who sees their instrument as another person. Side note on that, it was also interesting to see when Kumiko finally chose her youth, she had this sort of resigned smile on her face, and she only picked it up after sort of checking out or scoping out the other instruments for a short moment, almost like she was thinking, do I really want to commit myself to this relationship? So Asuka is not completely crazy to express that relationship between instrument and player as a life commitment, because in a sense, it is. For some odd reason, I really like the detail of Asuka playing the silver youth while Kumiko has the gold one. For my fellow Land of the Lustrous fans, of course, because Kumiko's VA also plays Foss in that. It reminds me a bit of the pairing between Foss's gold alloy and then Cinnabar's silver mercury. But back to Hibike, Asuka is also a better euphonium player than Kumiko at this stage, likely because she's played it for longer and evidenced by how she can play a scale using just the mouthpiece really, really well. A scene I wish we could have seen, or I hope is coming down the track, was when some of the section leaders stay back late at school and Asuka rides by, it was Haruka and Kaori, and she says that, because of everything going on with the section leader meetings, she was so pissed, she decided to blow off some steam and play the youth by herself. I would have loved to watch Asuka play by herself, especially when there's no one around to tease or to play that strong personality off of. We've seen how Reina pours her emotion into her trumpet playing. So I kind of want to see what that would be like with Asuka now. My guess is it would be pretty epic. Her just channeling pure rage into her music and then afterwards becoming her completely cool and calm self again, just ready to take on the world. Asuka is also an extremely helpful and gifted teacher herself. When Hazuki is struggling with those lip slurs, she says this funny line like, "Oh, you're getting stuck at every step like a good beginner." And I'm finding with Asuka, a lot of the things that she says can often have a double meaning. With that line, you could say she's being a bit cheeky and a tease and is like, "Yeah, you're really getting stuck on that, aren't you, you cute noob?" And, or it could be something much more encouraging, like, "Hey, everyone who's just starting out gets stuck on this, so don't worry." It's hard to tell with Asuka, but then she does step in and help. So you've got to conclude that it's probably a bit of both, and that at the end of the day, she really is a great bass section leader and is just trying to help the more inexperienced players grow. I wondered if Asuka ever considered to become band leader herself. I think she has all the gifts for it. An ability to persuade. She has confidence in herself as a musician, as well as a good judgment for what is the best direction for the band as a whole. But also she has this ability to negotiate and be as democratic as possible. She also seems to command a tad more respect from the other band members compared to Haruka, who, don't get me wrong, is, I think, an excellent band leader. It's just probably because Asuka has that much more of a stronger personality. But then it makes me think that that's a possible reason why Asuka wouldn't want to be leader. It's because being bass section leader allows her maybe more leeway to be a bit more of a dictator. You don't have to deal with as many difficult personalities in a 60 plus person band, which is something that can really take away the enjoyment of why most people join band in the first place. It's to play music and not to play politics. Which brings me to Haruka, who I respect so much for genuinely being a good leader. She doesn't talk back when Taki holds her personally responsible for calling the ensemble together, even when they were nowhere near ready. She doesn't point fingers and be like, "Oh, it's because the rest of them didn't want to practice anymore and so they made me." She doesn't say any of that, just kind of takes it all on her own shoulders. I felt bad for her being stuck between Taki and the other students who at one point expected Haruka to tell him on their behalf that they would be playing at Sunfest no matter what. I think the other students maybe feel they can dictate to Haruka like that because she doesn't push back, or rather she doesn't have the tact that Asuka does, which is why it's perfect she has Asuka as her loyal second command. Like, Asuka doesn't strong arm the section leaders either, but reasons with the band and comes up with these practical stopgap solutions to at least try to push them in the right direction, like getting the sections to get together and agree on what they want to do in response to Taki sensei's higher standard that he's demanding of them. There's also Kaori. So the trumpet section leader, I think that's also where she comes in. She seems to be quite popular amongst the band members. In episode 4, this bunch, which I think is a combination of trumpeters and trombones and flutes and French horns, so sort of a scattering mix of all the sections, they're all waiting on this girl, the saxophone girl, to report on what's going on with the section leader meeting, and they all seem to be hanging on to or waiting for what Kaori's opinion is. So interestingly, it seems like Kaori has an outsized influence on the rest of the band, and luckily she is also in Haruka's camp. She encourages Haruka and gives her the backup that she needs. So yeah, there must be something about Haruka that draws these powerful, influential people around her and gets them to use their influence on the rest of the band to help her. So Haruka kind of gives me like Frodo vibes. Not that Haruka is Frodo. That's not what I'm saying, but I guess I sort of am. Only in the sense that she draws people who are outwardly more powerful than her, while her own abilities as a great leader are much more subtle and hidden. Another character I'm very interested in now, the mysterious girl who constantly looks out the window, who we learned was Natsuki Nakagawa. She is the symbol of defeatism, but somehow she's still in the band, even if she was putting in zero effort and like going home as soon as the clock struck 5. However, she didn't say no to Kumiko, suggesting that they all try to play together as a bass section. So she's holding out for something. It seems like she just needed an external catalyst to re-spark her passion for playing in a band, and that catalyst or spark just happened to be Kumiko. So I'm very much looking forward to discovering what was behind her initial descent into despair and what made her different to, say, Goto and Riko, who, despite all of the drama of the previous year, continued to play on the same passion. Yet another quietly tortured character, it seems, is Kumiko's sister, Mamiko. And I surmise that her issue maybe is seeing her younger sister slowly rediscovering her love for the youth and of playing in a band. And maybe that hurts a little bit because, as someone who gave up music after getting into university, her seeing someone close to her still get to enjoy something that she did back in the day probably dredges up a lot of memories of a past that is now in essence closed to her. In fact, I wonder if Mamiko didn't try harder to encourage or convince Kumiko to not quit band or to try for something better than Kitauji High School, partly because it would make it easier on herself to not have to live with someone who was still able to enjoy that musical path, which is completely understandable. And, or like she was in this mindset that, well, eventually Kumiko, like herself, will have to learn to give up music to pursue like a real life, like a career and studies. So it's better that Kumiko parts ways with music this way, like earlier and more as her own choice, than what I suspect happened to Mamiko, which is that entrance exams came along and it was this clean, brutal choice that she had to make between her studies or her music. And like that's all speculation, and maybe there's something entirely different going on there. But on rewatch, and Oliver JaJaDo also pointed this out, there is an incredibly profound shot when Kumiko comes home to Mamiko and she sets her youth case down on the floor. And it's the youth that separates them as they're having this sort of slightly uncomfortable conversation. And then Mamiko walks away off the screen. So this setup symbolizing an unspoken barrier that's between Kumiko and Mamiko, which stems from the divergent paths that they've taken in relation to their musical journeys. Also, remember the cherry blossoms? It's like Mamiko is the character for whom the cherry blossoms have already fallen to the ground, and it's unclear whether she felt like she made the most out of her time when she was playing her instrument, like whether she made the most of that while she still had the chance to, or if she harbors some kind of regret for not doing so. Or maybe she did have the best time ever in high school in her band. She just hasn't quite learnt to accept that that is now a season in her life that is over. And it's kind of sad thinking about it, because I guess the key is acceptance, right? You know, giving up an instrument or any passion really doesn't necessarily have to then lead to sadness and regret, even if you didn't go all the way professional. With music anyway, you can always pick it up again and just pick it up for fun. which is what I do now, actually. So yeah, I very curious to see what's going on with Mamiko and whether it's just an issue of accepting that that part of her life, which Kumiko is now enjoying, is over, and just sort of being able to reckon with that. Okay, time to get into some notes for episode 3. First off, Kumiko being a smug little shit to Hazuki and enjoying a little bit too much telling her about the reality of pain when learning an instrument. That kind of hazing she does, very true to real life, where the more experienced players will lord it over the ones who are just starting out. Another music teaching related detail was Taki sensei's choice to make the band play the Marines hymn, which is a beginner's piece, as his first test of their resolve. And I gave the piece a listen, and there is a lot of repetitive notes and runs. I mean, the tuba part is literally 2 notes repeated over and over and over. So it is easy, but like a lot of music teachers do using this exact same method, Taki was testing a couple of things. First, their willingness to practice and take something seriously and push through the tediousness of practice. And second, their ability to play a very simple piece well, very well, which would be a signal that they're ready to take on a more complex piece. It's clear, though, that some of the band was unaware that if you can't play an easy piece, then you have no chance at all at a harder one. So there's quite some hubris on display on the part of some of the band members. And obviously, that's also the attitude that led to the dramatic split that we also found out about, where half of the second years left the school. And I guess the other half who stayed are the third years now. So presumably the half that quit went to other schools where they take their music program more seriously. So now a lot of the third years who are left behind are still messing around. And you could see that in this shot where the French horns are playing like thumbsies. It's the third years who are bringing down a first year with them. So it's this cycle of bad influence that Taki also has to help break. Speaking of Taki, he has this slightly disturbing way of smiling that outwardly looks calm, but feels like it's papering over a whole lot of something, some emotion that's kind of hard to gauge right now. Almost like he's containing this storm within him. He's a tough teacher for sure. If some part is unbearable, he'll say it straight to your face, but also he says it with the greater purpose of rousing the Katauji High School band to do better and to fulfill their greater potential. He's even smiling right after they have that terrible tuning before their first ensemble. It was like he pretended to not hear how incredibly out of tune they were, even though he clearly knew that the subsequent playing was going to be disastrous. There were also students in the band who knew that their playing was awful and suffered too. So I love that they showed that in the pan across to the band members after Taki stops them from playing. So Taki let them play, knowing that they would be terrible. It was a planned verbal smackdown. The lesson was like, if you guys still sound terrible, this is the end of the road for you. And the band eventually pulled themselves together to pass their first goalpost. And it wasn't just conquering the Marines piece, but mentally like conquering this mindset that limited them from progressing or leveling up their music. I mean, sure, their unifying as a band was driven by anger at Taki, but it worked. And yes, a few of you did point out that same girl who said that she would throw her mouthpiece at Taki if they weren't going to Sunfest. She was getting ready to do just that right after they'd finished playing for him that second time round. There was an interesting argument made by one of the band girls who complained to Taki that all he seems to do is tell them that they sound bad. and not tell them specifically what it is that they're doing wrong, which on first hearing is like a fair assessment and something that he does address later by visiting each of the sections and then giving them specific advice on the things that they have to work on. But also, in another interesting musical note here, I think for some of the more experienced band members, so not someone like Hazuki, who is literally a complete beginner, but for the other members who have played for some number of years, they already should be at that level where for such an easy piece, your ears should be trained enough to pick up on the things that are wrong yourself. There is a point in your musical journey where the teacher becomes more of a guidepost, someone to keep you on track, rather than someone who leads and who stands there and tells you everything that you have to fix. And I don't quite remember when it starts to be like that, but it's probably around the intermediate level when you've played for a couple of years, where all the teacher has to do is say, that's bad, do it again. And you should instinctively know what they're talking about. So it was interesting seeing those kinds of arguments from the students. And I guess if you haven't experienced learning an instrument, it would be totally reasonable to think that Taki was just criticizing without being constructive. But it also is a bit more of a gray area after you take into account the supposed experience of some of the band members. When band practice was cancelled because a lot of students felt like there'd be no point practicing if the section leaders haven't decided yet on how they're going to approach Taki's new policy of not going to Sunfest until they reach a certain standard, Kumiko describes it as a helpless situation that the first years in particular had no choice but to go along with that, which wasn't true because Reina, the badass that she is, shows them that there is another way, that you can forge your own path by playing her trumpet while the meeting is going on and not giving a shit. So, I mean, maybe she just needed to vent through her music. Maybe she was trying to guilt trip the rest of them. Maybe she wasn't, you know. The thing is, she didn't care. Like, she will play no matter what the situation is, which is what ends up lighting a fire under Kumiko and the other girls. So that is a nice theme that's coming through, this idea that broader change can start with just one person or a small minority of people. Hazuki says in this episode that concert band isn't really an individual activity, and she's right. I mean, I bet Reina constantly wishes that it was, but yes, in a band, it's not going to work if not everyone else is on board. However, at the same time, certain like very influential or very stubborn individuals, Reina being one of them, can help nudge and inspire others and catalyze like a positive cascade effect. At the end of episode 4, just jumping to there, like right before Taki gives his verdict on their ensemble performance, there was an interesting choice to have a focus shot on a drop of water falling into a bucket and causing ripples. A pretty direct allusion to the fact that action from one person can have ripple effects on the rest of the band. And there's a few ripples that we could point to that led to the band improving themselves. Reina's trumpet playing influenced Kumiko, who then reached out to Natsuki. Taki pissed off some of the members who practiced harder out of spite. And then Kaori wanting to back Haruka and probably playing a big part in why it was decided that they would keep practicing for that week, at least until their second ensemble. Speaking of Reina not caring, it seems the one thing she does care about is people bad-mouthing or even just questioning Taki-sensei. And when I rewatched that scene of her appearing out of nowhere to yell at Kumiko and Shuichi, I don't know, it still felt a little weird, and I'm hoping and praying that they're not playing out the trope of a student having this huge crush on a teacher. Like, there have been multiple times where people like Hazuki and I think Sapphire too have commented on how good looking Taki sensei is. So I hope that's not the case, but anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm sure there's something else going on. Also at the end of episode 3, Reina's scream at the end, everyone heard that, right? Because everyone heard her playing the Dvorak piece. So I kind of love how dramatic she is. There's just so much unresolved emotion and rage that just needs an outlet. Episode 4 started with the part meet, or the section leader meeting. Game of Thrones style, there were 9 of them, which is a good number in case you need a tiebreak. And on the pissed off side were the clarinet leader, Hirone, and then Judy, the horn leader. So those two very obviously raging at Taki. Some of the other leaders didn't seem to have a strong opinion either way, and even seemed open to the idea of getting their sections to practice harder. In that camp was Rana, the bassoon and oboe leader, and I think I really like her. And then there's the percussion leader, Narai, and Kotoko, the flute and piccolo leader, didn't really express an opinion. And then, of course, there's trombone leader, Hideri, who doesn't give a shit, but not in the way that Reina doesn't give a shit. Like, he literally does not give a shit, which of course leaves Kaori, Haruka, and Asuka, the holy trinity of supportive friends who wants the band to do better. Although Asuka, the scheming political mastermind that she is, in the meeting kind of like stroked her Confucius beard and said, I do understand both sides of the argument. And Haruka is a little bit taken aback at that, probably because she thought Asuka would be a bit more openly supportive. But Asuka obviously 100% has her back. And I think she just goes about it in a more strategic, more manipulative way. So I think because of the way that the split works out, including, a couple of the leaders are fine either or, the decision is made to keep practicing until the following week's ensemble. Then, if they aren't allowed to go to Sunfest, only then will they rebel and basically guillotine Taki. Which brings us to the training arc, where the tediousness of practice is on full display, and Kumiko actually articulates the eternal musician's dilemma, that even if you can play something perfectly 10 times in a row and then you move on to the next thing, there is always the next thing and then the next thing and the next thing that's not perfect. Perfection is one hell of an elusive pipe dream. So practicing for a major event like a competition or a performance or an exam is a kind of hell. I mean, it's a hell that I'm glad that I went through, but it is still a hell of sorts. And you can practice all you want to the point where you are breathing and dreaming the music, but there's always that off chance that something won't go to plan. It's a tiny chance, especially if you've practiced hard enough and you've reached a certain level, but it's a chance nonetheless. So no performance is ever quite the same, and nothing is ever predictable in a live performance. It's both a curse and a blessing. Great point from the Sledge, who wrote in that Taki didn't actually single out the flutist in front of her whole section, especially in front of her kohai, but only in front of her fellow third years, who were probably there to support her. Yeah, great observation. I was thinking about it again, and I still feel Taki came off very strong, and that there were other ways that he could have handled the student. Like, for one, he's not known the students for long, possibly a week or two, and I feel that that is such an important part of whether, as a teacher, you can be so brutally honest and direct. Without that trust and that relationship built over time, me personally, like, I couldn't imagine saying that to a student, to be honest, even if they were terrible. And also, I know that in the show they do have a deadline to meet for Sunfest, but I don't know. I mean, we'll never know for sure, but I doubt that he sat down individually first with that student and laid out all of her possible options and really take the time to understand whether she even wants to go down this path of competitive playing. I mean, maybe she is just in it for the good times, just because of the majority of the band, right? Just because they voted to want to try and get to nationals doesn't mean that that individual student wanted it, or that she had really thought through what that meant. So yeah, I'm still a bit iffy about Taki's approach, but you know, it worked in the end. So I guess that's the main thing. Special mention for Goto. He gets it. Like, he tells Hazuki that long tones are the basis of everything when Hazuki complains that they're really boring to practice, and they are. So Goto may not be able to sing in tune, but he definitely has the right attitude and he can play in tune. I'd like to know more about what was behind him quitting track to join the band in middle school. Maybe it was injury related, which would be an interesting arc to explore, of losing something that you love only to find another thing that you can be passionate about. His deceptively simple answer to Kumiko's question, well, have you been playing tuba ever since, was, I like tuba. It's so simple, but in it was encompassed so much purity in loving music and loving playing his instrument that it was a very powerful statement. Curiously, that conversation took place with the camera focused on the person who's not actually talking but is listening in on the conversation between Kumiko and Goto, and that's Riko. That soft smile that she gives after Goto's answer is the most wholesome thing ever. I don't know what's going on with those two. I do hope we get to see more interactions between them, but I like the idea of her kind of falling in love with someone because of this shared love for their instrument. Probably the most solid foundation upon which to build any lasting relationship. Okay, another quick musical detour about something really cool that happens in that scene too. So Taki sensei asked the bass section to play the normal tuning B flat, but because the bass section was very in tune, you could hear like a clean overtone of the F, which is the harmonic that's an octave plus a fifth above the B flat. Overtones are the most amazing thing ever, and I won't rant about them too much, but because Taki mentioned them in the show, it gives me an excuse to nerd out a little. So what he was referring to is this series of notes that occur naturally in nature called the harmonic series. When you play, pluck a string or you blow air through an instrument, the note that's produced is actually made up of a bunch of notes harmonizing together. The fundamental note, which is the actual note that you're playing, plus all of these other notes called harmonics or overtones that vibrate at higher frequencies or pitches relative to the fundamental note. Which harmonics are stronger or weaker depend on different things like the shape and the size of the instrument and the way that you play it. So that is why two different instruments playing the exact same fundamental note can sound so different in sound, in timbre. It's because the combination of harmonics that's being produced is different. So just really fascinating stuff, and I love that they referenced overtones because they are a huge part of why some brass instruments can produce such different sounding notes just by varying their technique. By the way, I'm so proud of Hazuki for being able to keep up with the rest of the bass section despite being an absolute beginner. I think she's killing it. Okay, next thing we gotta talk about from Red Letter Red 7. Something I appreciate about Hibike is how much of a dork Kumiko can be when she's not trying to be a background character. Like, sure, everyone is a dork when they're talking to an intimidating friend, crush, narrative foil, but my girl literally screamed, "You inspire me," and ran for the hills. Also, those soft smiles when Goto said he just really likes the tuba, I felt that a lot, like a lot. He feels a connection with the tuba. Playing tuba is what he wants to do. I love seeing that in fiction, such a pure and unfiltered love of the art. Yes, exact same wavelength regarding Goto. I'm right there with you. The funny thing I'm enjoying about the Kumiko Reina dynamic is exactly what you say, just how dramatic they are with each other, how every small word or movement causes such a huge ripple effect on each other's thoughts and actions. It literally set the tone of the show back in episode 1 when Kumiko's one line about, Reina being a bit crazy for thinking they could even reach nationals set the scene for years of teenage angst. And speaking of angst, the amount of angst but also extreme joy that Reina causes Kumiko, I find hilarious. Like when Reina asked Kumiko to please move the desk for me, and then Kumiko just looks like world peace just happened. Reina's trumpet solo of From the New World, Kumiko is shook and it literally changes her musical trajectory. When Shuichi stops Kumiko at the train station and says that he wants to say something about Reina, Kumiko is immediately like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Is she okay? And she's very anxious. Also, that sound and the face that Kumiko makes when Reina scares her or just like appears out of nowhere from behind. Seriously, I don't know what's going on between those two, but it's just so awkward and so deliciously dramatic. Everything about that scene where Reina asks to speak privately to Kumiko, again, the drama is completely off the charts. Kumiko preparing for Reina to murder her, and there's all these shots of like the scary handprints on the wall and the trash cans, because obviously that's where Reina is gonna store Kumiko's chopped up body afterwards. And then like the flying crows. There was someone else who mentioned this scene. Helena Anjos. So Reina pulling Kumiko aside all dramatically only to say like one sentence to her was so funny and such a her thing to do, the drama queen. Seriously, Reina, like the walking out the back and the silent turn was so not necessary. This shot when Reina walks past Kumiko and Kumiko decides that she doesn't want to have any more regrets in relation to Reina. I loved how they timed the flash of Kumiko's realization with the downbeat of the piano part that starts playing in that scene. And then the music only gets more and more dramatic, especially with the introduction of the strings. There's also a long feet shot in there where it's only Kumiko's feet that's moving while Reina is absolutely still, reflecting how this is just a complete pouring out of Kumiko's heart and admiration for how much Reina has inspired her. But it's not completely one-sided because we see that movement in Reina's hair. Like her face doesn't really change, but her hair springs up sort of in a mild surprise. And then, of course, Kumiko panics. The climax of the music happens when Kumiko runs past Reina. And then when the music does end, it's a nice, fully resolved home chord resolution. Like everything's okay and we can all breathe a sigh of relief. Like that shot, I just love that shot. If this doesn't say gay panic, then I don't know what does. But even if it's not, just watching these two dramatic teenage munchkins try to navigate their explosive feelings for each other, it's such a ride because they're just at that stage in their lives where every little thing feels like it could either be the end of the world or the blossoming of a new one. There's like no in between. Finally, I mean, the ensemble performance was a success. There were so many little tiny moments with very deep meaning that was packed into this ending scene. At the end, for example, even though the band members have very anxious faces, Reina is relieved and even has a tiny smile on her face. She knows that they did good. And again, just like going back to that conversation about where once you reach a certain level of musicianship, you sort of know, that was like a sign of her level because she's able to judge for herself even before Taki said anything. I also loved that Kumiko looked over at Natsuki, who kind of gives her like a little shrug, but it's a good kind of shrug. It felt like a door opening a little wider for her to start rediscovering her passion for music again. Okay, so we're at this stage where the hard work really begins. Getting past Taki's little Sunfest test was just the first baby step. He says this interesting line that if we gather the time you all waste being young, this much practice shouldn't be that difficult. And I think he meant that they spend a lot of time on things that don't really matter. I mean, that probably includes all the time they sat around like playing scissors, paper, rock or just being slack. So he's suggesting that if they put some of that time towards practicing, like really practicing, that they could accomplish a lot, you know, more than they ever expected. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the other schools at Sunfest and seeing how Kataoji kids compare to them. At least they know now that Taki believes in them and is like really serious about helping them reach nationals. One last interesting musical detail. Remember last time I said to listen out for any modulations to a minor key, which seems to indicate that something is still not quite right? There was a modulation to a minor key right when the camera pans to some of the band members who still hate Taki. So yeah, definitely more drama to come. Yay, we can finally start episode 5 now. Sunfest. Let's go. Let's do this in 3, 2, 1, play. God, she really was so intense about that. That scary smile of his. I still find it so weird that it's so serene, but it covers over a whole range of emotions, I'm sure. I love that shot of Kumiko blowing into the youth. The other thing about watching Kyoani shows is just how incredibly quickly you get attached to these characters. The interesting thing though about Hibike that's different to K-On! Is also how much more speculation I'm able to do on the, again, quote unquote, side characters. There's just so much material there to delve into. Yeah, I do plan to do a character web for Hibike as well, but God, I think we're gonna need like a 2-hour section just for that. God, that shot. Let's turn this up. Oh, nice. She was a tennis player. Respect. Yeah, what is that machine? That's cool. Whoa, the evil eyes. She's got a good senpai. And Goto too. Rika and Goto. Hoping for a C cup. This girl, yeah, clearly still has her priorities in order. Kumiko is so evil. Asuka is not Petanko. The setup was so obvious, but yeah, nicely played, Kyoani. Oh, nice, they got special uniforms. Marching band uniforms. So excited. Oh man, are they going to be really shown up by the other schools? I'm a bit worried about that. Oh wow. Oh, they look so amazing. Like little sailor uniforms. So what does Sapphire do then? Some serious girl crushes in this band. Oh, so many ships in that 10 seconds. Is Kaori and Asuka meant to be something? Guys. Okay, don't spoil it, but that was cute. Aoi, I wonder how Aoi is feeling about all this. Steps and marching. So hard. Oh my gosh, that is precise. Math. My brain's hurting already. Man, this is hard work. So glad we never had to do this. Man, did you guys see all the little like glances between Reina and Kumiko? Oh. She's gotta do the twirlies. The Katauji specialty. Was that like a dig or an actual thing? The dictator. Look at her. Yeah, it's interesting their dynamic. You know, Asuka takes care of all the front-facing stuff and the confrontational stuff. Hey, there we go. But she did it for Haruka. I love Natsuki's vibe. She's just so, I mean, yeah, she's not gung-ho, but she's very like composed. Kind of has like a cool girl vibe. People are simple. Yeah, it's all about getting the incentives right. Whether that be hate or, you know, knowing that you'll actually get to perform at Sunfest. Yo, they did do a whole day of practice. Sax girl. Very impressive. Oh my gosh. This has gone beyond practicing out of spite now. It's just they literally want to do well at this marching band performance. Of course. So look, there's quite a few first years walking in the front. Just walking on the curb. I could never do that. The detail in the train stations and the subway is crazy as well. Like even the ads that they're posted up on the subway, the wall. Just the little things. Oh, God. Can you say awkward? Okay, how Kumiko's just walking one step behind Reina. Oh, so relatable. See, there's that comment again. Stop talking. Oh, she mentioned it. What was that, like, hair flick? God, that was the weirdest scene ever. I need to go back and just analyze every microsecond of it. Like, again with the Taki sensei thing, it's slightly bordering on obsession now with Reina, but also... But then Kumiko is equally obsessed with Reina. Oh, it's such a... I don't even want to think of it as a triangle sort of thing, because it's obviously that's not what they're going for, but... Are they? I don't know. I feel very weird inside. Tubers, man. Okay, it's good they have moving trucks. Don't worry, we'll talk about that scene later. Like with the brushing of the hair back and her smile. Oh. Oh, good on you, Shuichi. Is there something going on with Hazuki and Shuichi as well? Just definitely in high school. There's a lot of stuff that happens around the music. Oh, she's the accountant as well. Oh my gosh. PR people. I wonder why they do the visiting of the alumni. That's interesting. They're cute together. She just treats him like trash. And he's fine with it. Oh, that was nice. Excited. Goiga chisai. Taki, man. Come on. just a smile. What's with the patches on his like suit? On his elbows. Oh, their little hats are so cute. Hey. Scoping out the big players. Light blue demons. They're so cute, they're scary. Ugh. It's the intimidating sandwich. She says that so blandly. Azusa. Will she look like Azusa from K-On? Sort of. Yeah. What's the story? Please don't be because she knew that's where Taki Sensei would be. That's probably it, isn't it? Man. Oh, so that's where she could have gone, but she was like, I don't want to go the band path again. She's a bit hesitant about it. She's got her new peoples now. That was a significant moment for her. I mean, that's a good reason, starting from scratch. Yeah, it's starting her new start. Oh, she's so cute. It's like she was realizing in that moment that her new band and the new friends that she's found, she can actually rebuild again something. Yeah. Something that she can really get into and be really passionate about. That's so sweet. So many schools. Oh, I hope we get to see the whole performance. He's so nervous. Okay, so it is still a bit of spy there. And then one more. Oh man, the pressure. Oh, it's the cute blue demons. Oh, Kaori. Oh, it is the worst having to watch other schools go up before you. Reina, what are you doing? Oh, okay, she's just like shaking up the band, being like, shut up, guys, we're gonna be fine. Reina. Well, no, it's not, but it kind of is too. They have low expectations of Kitaoji. Yo, that's so hard having to hold the. Zuki. Hey, it's different to Rika, the style of song that they're playing. It doesn't sound as clean, not to me, but it's good enough. Yeah, good enough to get people's attention. Asuka doing her job too. Ooh, the piece of music that was chosen definitely more interesting. Oh, that was so little that we got. No. What? There is no way that was one full episode. Was that 20 minutes already? Wait. Oh, yeah. Time just kind of does a really weird thing when watching Hibike. Okay, I mean, definitely gonna rewatch like the performances again, even though it was only really a snippet of 10 seconds each for each school. Well, really just Rika and Katawaji. But it's such a huge difference from when we first heard them tune, like before their first ensemble that they did for Taki Sensei. And now, so I can only imagine how much better they're gonna get in the coming episodes after Sunfest. It was also really touching that Kumiko, when she met her friend from her previous school and had a choice sort of between going to see her old friends and sort of reestablishing that connection there and staying with her new band. Not that you have to cut ties, obviously, with your old friends when you're at a new school, but it was just symbolic of how she's really found a new home and she had no expectations, right? No expectations of enjoying band again at Guitar G. Like she probably chose Guitar G because they didn't have a special focus on music, which is obviously why all her other friends chose the other school. And I think even though she said she didn't really choose Guitar G for any specific reason, I think one of the reasons was because she kind of wanted to get away from the musical aspect. But now she's like, really happy that she's got back with her youth. She realizes that with Reina and Hazuki and Sapphire and all the other band members that she's gotten to know, that they actually have something there that they can work on together and aim high. So yeah, I can't believe this is episode 5 already, and we've gotten so much development for Kumiko already. That's kind of amazing. Just really good writing. All right, on to episode 6. Hopefully this one doesn't go by so quickly, but I'm assuming it will. It's just so good, the show. Okay, if you guys are ready, let's do this in 3, 2, 1, play. Sapphire is so small. She's really cute. Can't even see her above Taki's shoulder. Reina leading with her trumpet. Hey, I love that they changed that initial shot every time. And usually it's featuring Kumiko. Her face is so expressive, especially whenever she's around Reina. I don't know if it can get any more awkward between these two, Reina and Kumiko. And Reina's face is just like a stone, except for, you know, when she's talking about Taki, which is so weird. But yeah, her smile is really rare. I love whenever Asuka like sort of does this with her glasses. Shuichi's cool too. I really like him. And Goto just putting everything he has behind his tuba playing. Damn, just the way the camera moves in this OP is so like the way it shoots up into the sky, the spinning shot obviously around the band. Choice. Ironic because it's like a multi-choice test. Prefectural competitions. Oh. Right, prefecture, regionals, and then nationals. Something else that's going to cause a lot of tension. I think they all kind of assumed. Maybe it's like a senior system, where it's like the third years will automatically get in, but I don't think that's Taki Sensei's style. On the flip side, the first years will get a chance. Oh, 55. So they've got about 60. Okay. So meritocracy. Definitely the better system. Of course, it's the clarinets again. Panic. You actually have to try now. Yeah, this is not a democracy. Yeah. Oh, those tuning pegs are so beautiful. I love how Reina, when Kumiko thinks about her, appears like some sort of, nightmarish figure. Oh, God. Just a whole bunch of sapphires come in from Cedar. Oh my god. Nice. Yeah, she's like, you can't rest on your laurels. I'm assuming that's some kind of like Japanese story for kids. Yeah. Goto. Wind of Province. Oh, I love that these are Japanese songs. Ah, from Kyoto. Just going local. And of course, Asuka knows everything about her. Oh, that's hard. Boom. Oh my gosh, this is so much harder than the Marines hymn. Ah, I can't wait to hear the whole thing. Perfect first go. She probably knows the piece already. Yeah, it's not as clean, but she can do it with a bit of practice. Natsuki? Is Natsuki gonna try out? Is she gonna practice? Never mind about that. Oh, Riko's so nice, like helping Hazuki. Technically... Oh, they're both helping her. It's like parents with their little baby. Sapphire is also incredibly dramatic. Yeah, technically, I mean, Riko and Goto and Hazuki, they're all competing for the same parts, right? Unless there are 3 tuba parts. Yeah, that's kind of gross. Again, I feel like there's way more cleaning and maintenance involved with brass instruments and woodwind than strings, for sure. Oh, nice. What about Kumiko's thinking? She's like, I mean, I remember, yeah, she's thinking back to when she first picked up her youth. She had a silver one back then. It's actually kind of awesome that Hazuki reminds Kumiko of what it's like to fall in love for the first time with an instrument. She is always there. Ah, it's trying out the solo, of course. Oh man, I bet everyone thinks Kaori is gonna get it. Yeah, but Reina's gonna be better. Among the senpais, note. But not among all the trumpets. Oh, look at that like little glance again. They're always making each other blush. It's heaven, her trumpet playing. Oh my god. Do you know how heavy tubas are? Oh man, poor wildlife. That comment about the matcha ice cream is so interesting. It's a reminder that Kumiko is kind of indecisive. Oh god, all that optimism just flowing out of her. She's literally just shoving the ice cream into her face. Hey, so she's the only Barry sax. It's really hard to explain in words. Yes, it's a good thing. It's like pleasure in pain. He's like, I just like it. Oh my god. Oh my god, I love these two. The pain parents. You've got to be born into it. She totally just translated for Goto. That was amazing. That's Gacha-chan. Sight reading. Yeah, the learning curve, man. Can't be too easy, but it can't be too hard either. It's a tricky balance. That was such a scary. Nani? Oh, oh god. Of course, Asuka has toned abs. Sapphire Kawashima. What does she have to do? No. It's just a bigger version of her keychain. Oh my god, no. Those subs again. And also, it's for her sadistic nature. That's right. No one wants to play the youth. What is even happening? Oh god. Oh, I love that she does the Goto fist clench there. Oh my god, don't post that. Yeah. And especially when there's other people around you who are already more accomplished than you. She's not having fun yet. Is that true? Hmm. This guy. I've liked Tuber ever since. Like, that's something that he has, like, tattooed on his heart. Oh, I'm gonna see Hazuki's face the first time she plays in an ensemble. Oh, that's gonna be so sweet. Oh, it's so great how they're just banding together to help her. She can though. Did they compose a piece around the practice one that Asuka gave her? Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Yeah, that was great. Does make a huge difference. She just needed that, just that experience. It's like magic just running through your veins. The experience of playing with other people in harmony. That's patronizing. No. Okay, definitely they're trying to set up something with these two. I mean, look at that shot. Wow, he even caught her with like a hot dog in his hand. I mean, you can't go wrong with some additional incentive, right? Reina. No, Aoi. No, don't you dare end. Oh my god. Lucky you, Kumiko. Does Aoi... I forget. Aoi plays the trumpet? I think? It doesn't seem like whatever she plays, I don't think she feels confident at all that she'll get a part in the auditions. Either that or she's still feeling just so iffy about the whole trying for nationals thing. And she's envious of Kumiko being able to just so wholesomely and pure-heartedly go for something. I mean, there's no ill will in Aoi, but just she can't get on board with trying. But yeah, fantastic episode on and focus on Hazuki and the bass section just banding around her to help her, one, to get better technically. And, you know, you had Asuka giving her the practice piece, you had Goto and Riko giving her solid tips on how to look after a tuba. And then you've got Kumiko and Sapphire, you know, purposefully playing that really simple, easy piece. Oops, sorry, just gonna stop this. Really simple, easy piece, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and just having that nice moment where Hazuki can feel part of a band, and there's just something magical that clicks into place when all these instruments put their parts together. I loved it. A very intriguing pair of episodes with lots of little moments and then a few bigger ones that really push forward quite a few key characters' development. So I guess I'll give some thoughts character by character, and then I'll leave it to the next reaction to really dig deep down into the details of every single second of every scene. And also because I'd love to incorporate like what you guys thought of the episodes. I just feel like a lot happened, and I definitely would have missed some pretty key details. Again, with Hibike, it's all about details. Seriously, these episodes went by so fast that I don't think my brain is sufficiently quick enough to process all of the little micro expressions that go by, let alone contextualize all of them within the two key elements that were the focus of these episodes, namely Sunfest and then Hazuki's awakening to her love for playing the tuba in an ensemble. We can start with Kumiko and her flash of realization when faced with an old friend from her middle school who is now a cute blue demon at Rika. Her realization that she's gotten what she wanted, a fresh start at Kitaoji High School, but not necessarily in the way that she imagined it to play out in her mind at all. I think she thought it would be starting from scratch in all aspects of her life, including stepping away from band, or even if she didn't entirely abandon music, she was definitely thinking of picking up a new instrument. You know, remember how, not against it, just how unwilling she was to touch the youth again. But here she is with her youth, realizing that even though some things haven't changed, everything has changed. Her relationship with her instrument feels different now because she's actually working really hard alongside the rest of her new friends to improve herself. They're trying to get to nationals, for crying out loud. She's with Reina, who we'll talk about in a bit, and really in a completely different mindset to when she was first arriving at Kitaoji. So I'm quite happy for Kumiko that she's found her feet, and in doing so hasn't had to give up on her youth yet. That part where her friend from Rika kept saying, oh, there must have been a reason you went to Kitaoji, you know, did the rest of your friends go there? And oh, did you know Reina also went to Kitaoji over Rika? We thought maybe, you know, there's lots of cute guys there. Kumiko being able to say, well, no, I didn't really choose Kitaoji for any particular reason other than to have a fresh start, was like her saying, one, she doesn't need a reason to choose to do something new and outside of people's expectations for her. Like, if you want to do that, just do it. And also, too, there's a bit of pride now there on Kumiko's part for being at Kitaoji. Sure, they're maybe not the best band around yet, but they've worked hard together. They've gotten to a pretty impressive stage already, and they are just getting started on this journey to the nationals. So it was almost like Kumiko was realizing, wow, I'm stuck here with these new bandmates and I have no regrets at all. And actually, I'm glad that I chose this school. So yeah, huge character development there. Reina also really showing some different sides to her character these two episodes, helping snap her bandmates out of their fear and their worrying about the other schools being so much better than they are, even if it meant playing her instrument when she's not really supposed to. This I don't give a shit streak of hers is still going strong, which I'm happy about. She will do whatever it takes to help her bandmates, especially now that they are all in this together and that they're all trying to prove to their prefecture that they are no longer the, oh, what's that school again? Oh, I don't know, yeah, they're not worth watching. We'll just wait for Rika or Rakushu, you know. Her conversation with Kumiko when they're walking home together was also significant in that Kumiko was so scared to mention anything related to their past band experience and not being able to win gold. But Reina shows that she is well and truly over that now, or maybe she was already. And she probably was never as hung up over that as Kumiko seemed to be. We'll talk later about that incredibly gay framing of that shot of her pushing her hair back and smiling at Kumiko and saying, well, of course, that's something you'd say. It was just the important thing there was it was another milestone reached in their relationship, and really a huge weight lifted off of Kumiko's shoulders, knowing that she doesn't have to tiptoe around Reina so much and feel like she's walking on eggshells around her all the time. The relationship between Hazuki and Asuka is a sight to behold. It's basically a tiger mom with her wayward daughter who occasionally forgets her place sometimes and needs to be put in a headlock every now and then to be reminded that her base mom is the queen. In general, I'm just loving the camaraderie of the entire base section. Asuka is smashing her job as the base section leader. She rules with an equal amount of respect and fear and benevolence, as shown by how kind she was to mark all of the fingerings for Hazuki on the music, and also recognizing that, you know, it's critical that Hazuki also feels the motivation of doing well, taking steps to ensure that her baby tuba player doesn't feel left behind and just drowning in a sea of boredom because she has to keep practicing all those basics. I mean, you really do have to be careful with complete beginners and just keep an eye on the steepness of the learning curve. From the perspective of a music teacher, teaching absolute beginners is both incredibly rewarding and also very challenging. You know, just watching them take to music and the instrument with fresh eyes, and almost always initially this like burst of energy, but it's also more challenging in some ways than teaching a more experienced player, because it requires some delicate handling in terms of how much you push them to improve, but also making sure that they're getting enough self-confidence and fun from being able to master all of these new techniques. Okay, here we go. It was noticeable that these episodes turned up the shipping gauge by a lot. So much blushing, and little fleeting glances here and there, and a lot of turning away in embarrassment, but secretly being like, oh my gosh, she was staring at me. And that's already accounting for my superior ability to make ships happen in my very gay mind. So we had that fascinating moment between Kaori and Asuka, whose ship's flag I am now waving madly. That scene was set up so meticulously, there is no way it wasn't designed to contrast how much more into Asuka that Kaori is compared to the other second year girl. I forgot her name, the one who keeps fawning over Kaori like a little puppy. There was noticeable blushing on Kaori's part. Asuka plays it a bit more cool, even though she's complimenting Kaori on how good she looks. And then Kaori, come on girl, just giving way more detailed compliments than was really called for, just getting into how great of a body Asuka has. It was very gay. It was a moment with a capital M, and I loved every bit of it. Reina and Kumiko, the lighting of that scene with Reina flipping her hair back, which I'm sure is an iconic scene in the Hibike fandom to this day. On a scale of 0 to Mugi's wildest Yuri fantasy, this is pretty high up there. It came out of left field just right after Kumiko is gay panic rambling, and then ends with Kumiko staring after Reina with her mouth wide open and replaying the smile over again in her head. It's I'm not expecting any of these relationships to go anywhere, and when I mean that, I mean being canonically gay, or maybe I'm just kind of keeping my hopes down. It's always that old line of focus, you know, on the band and the music and how they are overcoming difficulties, blah 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 blah. And I am loving all of that in this show. obviously, because I've ranted so much about how real it is to real life band or orchestral experience. It's just, I see Kyoani and I acknowledge all of the little details and framings of shots that were deliberately put there to elevate the gayness. And, you know, it's important to acknowledge the gay and then we can just move on. Who else? Well, the other ship, which was not a gay ship, but equally as, you know, cute, was Hazuki and Shuichi. They had a couple of moments too, although at this stage it's probably more one-sided on Hazuki's part, where Shuichi just happened to be in the right place and the right time to help her and encourage her, which was really sweet. So I don't mind it. Ships aside, seeing the band perform so coherently together at Sunfest and playing a piece that is more complex than what we heard them play in their ensemble in front of Taki was very satisfying. Even being willing to stay an extra half hour to practice their marching without Taki having requested it, they have come already like a really long way. A few of them, though, still holding it against Taki for being such a tough ass, but slowly you can see that they're getting more and more invested in their own progression as musicians. And that actually is, for someone who's been through the whole rigmarole, is really cool to see. So yeah, like basically whatever it takes to ignite that fire, right? Even if it's hate for Taki or just being around other schools that are more prestigious, that also adds fuel to the fire. As does the general prefecture's lack of recognition for their band, but that has definitely changed after their performance at Sunfest. So the little snippet we heard of the prefecture competition piece, that sounds incredibly difficult and just also on another level altogether. So I'm sure we have a couple of episodes where the drama is around practicing and perfecting that piece. Also, especially now that Taki has done away with the seniority system and is making everyone audition legitimately for their parts, to the dismay of a lot of the third years. So there's no coasting anymore for real, and it's going to be interesting and very entertaining, I think, picking apart the auditions and seeing how the players differentiate themselves from each other. I hate to say it, guys, but that is it for today's reaction. Thank you so much for watching along with me. I am insanely crazy about Hibike and the drama that it's serving up and all of the pairings that we're getting, which is super interesting for me. So definitely looking forward to all of your comments and discussing further with you what the hell happened in these episodes. So yeah, I hope you have a lovely weekend. Do take care of yourselves and I will see you next time.